The knock came at 6:12 a.m., not polite, not angry, controlled, like someone who expected obedience. My father's voice cut through the hallway. "You ready to apologize?" I didn't answer. The door swung open. The room was stripped bare, mattress naked, closet yawning, drawers pulled clean, no suitcase, no clothes, no daughter. For half a second his face went blank, like a judge realizing the verdict folder is empty. Then the doorbell rang. When he opened it, a man in a gray suit stood on the porch, rain beating on his briefcase, hands shaking just enough to notice. "Mr. Hale," the man said carefully, "I need to speak with the entire family, immediately." My father smiled. That was his first mistake. 2 months earlier, I was still trying to be invisible. I was 29, living in a converted studio over a garage in South Tacoma, drafting planting plans for people who would never remember my name. Thanksgiving was supposed to be a formality. Show up, smile, absorb the usual jokes about my phase, go home lighter by one more piece of dignity. Instead, I asked a question. What did Grandma leave me? 30 relatives, a long oak table. My father standing at the head like he owned the oxygen. He laughed first, loud, inviting. "She left you life lessons," he said. "Some of us inherit responsibility, others get hobbies." The room followed his lead. Even my brother smiled. My face burned so hard I tasted copper. "All right," I said. That word did more damage than any argument ever could. The next morning, he grounded me. At 29, in front of everyone. Laughter rolled through the house like applause. I went upstairs, closed the door, sat on the bed I hadn't slept in since high school, and found the envelope. Cream paper. My name in a shaky hand I'd known my whole life. Inside, a letter and part of a legal document. Beneficiary, Mara Hale. I read the letter twice, then a third time, slower. "Don't show this to anyone. Not yet. He will try to erase you." I planned for that. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt warned. 3 weeks later, an email hit my inbox by mistake. Forwarded, not meant for me. Subject, Trust Amendment Draft. My brother had written it. "She won't fight it," he'd typed. "That's the beauty of it." That was when I decided to come home for Thanksgiving. Not to fix anything, to end it. And the man on the porch, he was carrying the originals. I didn't go home right away after I left the house. I drove until the streets thinned and the houses turned unfamiliar, parked behind a 24-hour diner, and sat in the car with the engine off, watching my breath fog the windshield. My phone buzzed twice. "Dad, where are you?" "Dad, this isn't funny." I turned the phone face down. At 7:41 a.m., another message came through. Not from him. "Evan, Dad's asking if you ran. Says it settles things." That word, settles, made my jaw lock. Inside the diner, the smell of burnt coffee and fryer oil clung to everything. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop. The email chain was still there, like a bruise you keep poking to make sure it's real. Trust Amendment Draft. Grounds, financial instability. Alternative beneficiary, Evan Hale. I screenshotted everything, backed it up, then backed it up again. At 9:13 a.m., I made the call. The receptionist's voice was calm, practiced. "Holloway and Pierce, how can I help you?" "My name is Mara Hale," I said. "I'm trying to reach Daniel Holloway." There was a pause, just long enough to make my pulse jump. One moment. When he came on the line, his voice was older than I expected. Measured. Heavy with experience. "She told me you'd hesitate," he said before I could explain. "But not forever." That was when I knew. The letter hadn't been hope. It had been instructions. By noon, he'd laid it out. The trust, irrevocable, filed 8 years ago. My father named trustee. Me named sole beneficiary. Medical evaluations attached. Witnesses documented. "And your father?" I asked. "He's already filed a petition to change it," Holloway said, 3 weeks ago. My grip tightened on the phone. "Can he?" "Only if you disappear," he said. "Or if the court believes you're incapable of objecting." I laughed once, sharp, humorless. That explains Thanksgiving. Silence on the line. Then, he's using the family as leverage. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. At 1:30 p.m., my mother called. "Mara," she said, voice thin, rehearsed. "Your father just wants peace. If you come back and apologize, this all goes away." I looked at the diner window. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, older than yesterday. "What goes away?" I asked. She didn't answer. I drove back as the sky darkened, the house glowing warm and inviting like it always had. Cars lined the street. Laughter spilled through open windows. 30 people, an audience. Exactly what he wanted. Inside, the air smelled like roasted turkey and control. I helped in the kitchen because no one asked me to do anything else. Evan didn't look at me. My father didn't need to. At 4 o'clock, we sat down. I was placed at the folding table again, the kids' table. My father stood, glass raised. "Tomorrow morning," he said, smiling, "I'll make an announcement about my mother's estate. I expect everyone present." His eyes found mine. That night, Evan cornered me by the sink. "You should drop it," he said quietly. "You'll lose." I met his gaze. "Do you know what she left me?" For the first time, he didn't smirk. 10 minutes later, my father called me into the living room, in front of everyone. "You're grounded," he said. "Go to your room." Laughter exploded. I nodded. "All right." Upstairs, I packed in the dark. No suitcase. Just what I could carry. At 4:02 a.m., I walked out the door. At 6:12, he came looking for me. At 6:13, the doorbell rang. And at 6:14, Daniel Holloway stepped inside with a briefcase my father should have been terrified of. Daniel Holloway didn't sit. He stood at the center of the living room like the furniture had rearranged itself around him. 30 relatives, half awake, half curious, clutching coffee mugs and plates of reheated pie. My father rose from his chair slowly, deliberately, using his height like a warning. "You're not invited," he said. "This is a family matter." Holloway set the briefcase on the table. The sound was soft, final. "I'm here because you violated an irrevocable trust," he replied, "and because you lied to the court." The word lied landed wrong. Too direct, too public. My brother shifted on the couch, laptop open on his knees, fingers already moving, deleting, adjusting, trying to get ahead of something that was already behind him. My mother stood frozen near the doorway, hands folded tight at her waist. "There is no trust," my father said evenly. My mother was confused near the end. Holloway opened the briefcase. The red notary seal flashed like a warning light. 8 years ago," he said, "your mother executed an irrevocable trust naming Mara Hale as sole beneficiary. Medical evaluations confirm full competency. Any attempt to alter it without her consent constitutes breach of fiduciary duty." Silence spread in layers. Someone's spoon clinked against porcelain and stopped. "The house?" my aunt asked quietly. "Included," Holloway said. "Purchased before marriage. Never yours." My father's jaw tightened. "Get out." "Gladly," Holloway replied. "But I'll return at 2 p.m. for the formal reading, with the court filings." He closed the briefcase and turned toward the door. That was when my father lost control. "You think you can walk in here and humiliate me?" he snapped. She ran away. She forfeited her rights. A voice cut in from the back. I didn't run. I stepped forward. Every head turned. My father stared like he was seeing a ghost that refused to stay buried. I'm here for the real reading, I said. Not the one you wrote. Holloway didn't look surprised. He simply moved aside and let me take the space. I placed the folder on the table. Inside, the trust copy, the bank confirmation, the email chain. She won't fight it, Holloway read aloud. That's the beauty of it. My brother's face collapsed. Not dramatically, just emptied. My father reached for the folder. Don't, I said. He stopped. For the first time in my life, he listened. At 2 p.m., the room was full again. Chairs aligned like a courtroom. My father stood at the front with a single page in his hand. He cleared his throat. The educational fund, no, Holloway interrupted, opening the briefcase again. You're done. He read the trust, all of it. When he finished, the room didn't erupt. It fractured. Whispers, sharp looks, people recalculating where they stood. My father said nothing. He turned and walked into his study and closed the door. The sound echoed. By Monday, he was no longer trustee. By Friday, the house was mine. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like relief. The house didn't celebrate. It absorbed. After Holloway left, people lingered in clusters, voices low, eyes avoiding each other. My aunt rinsed the same mug 3 times. A cousin slipped out without saying goodbye. My brother sat on the couch, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. My mother followed me into the kitchen. You didn't have to do it like this, she whispered. I looked at the counter where I'd chopped celery the day before, alone. There was never going to be a way that didn't hurt. Upstairs, my father stayed in his study. Door closed. The room where he'd made decisions for everyone else was suddenly too small to leave. At 3:40 p.m., a text from an unknown number buzzed my phone. You think this is over? I didn't reply. By Monday morning, the paperwork moved faster than I expected. Judges don't like trustees who lie. Banks don't like petitions that smell wrong. By noon, control of the trust was frozen. By evening, my father was removed. He called that night. You've destroyed this family, he said. No, I replied. You just can't control it anymore. He hung up. I returned to the house alone 2 days later. The keys felt heavier than they should have. The rooms echoed without his voice. I walked through slowly, touching door frames, the banister, the wall where height marks were still carved from childhood. In the backyard, the garden had collapsed into itself. Dead stems, hard soil, neglect layered thick. I knelt anyway, pressed my hands into the dirt. The house wasn't angry, it was waiting. That week, my brother's firm quietly removed his bio from their website. A client withdrew. A call from the Bar Association followed. He didn't reach out. My mother did. I'm staying somewhere else for a while, she said. I need to think. Take your time, I told her. When I hung up, I realized something had shifted. Not victory, not revenge, ownership, of space, of silence, of myself. That night, I slept in the master bedroom for the first time. No dreams, just rest. Outside, rain tapped the windows like it always had. Inside, nothing demanded anything from me. And for the first time, I didn't brace for the morning. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. No stamp, no return address. Slid under the door like it didn't want witnesses. Inside, a single line in my mother's handwriting. I should have stopped him years ago. I'm trying now. I folded it once, then again. Put it in the kitchen drawer and didn't decide what it meant. The city moved on faster than my family did. Neighbors waved differently when they learned the house was mine. Not warmer, more cautious. Power shifts always leave a residue. 2 weeks later, the bank confirmed the transfer. 6 figures sitting still, untouched, like a loaded weapon I had no interest in firing. The trust officer spoke gently, like I might flinch. "I'll leave it where it is," I said. "For now." That afternoon, I cleared the study. My father's leather chair went first, then the framed photos. Handshakes, smiles. Men who'd nodded at him once and forgotten him forever. The shelves emptied quickly when you weren't sentimental. By dusk, the room smelled different. Less cologne, more dust and paper. That night, my brother finally called. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," he said. "I didn't think you'd actually try to erase me," I replied. Silence stretched thin. "You cost me everything," he said. "No," I said. "I stopped you." He hung up. A week later, I drove west. The coast appeared suddenly, gray and endless, like a truth that didn't care whether you were ready. The cottage waited where it always had. Smaller than memory. Stronger than it looked. Inside, the air held her. Lavender, paperbacks, time. On the table sat a wooden box, photographs, notes, a final letter. "If you're here, it means you chose yourself." I sat on the porch until the sun dipped and the rock turned gold, and I understood what she'd really left me. Not money, not property, an exit. Back in the city, spring came quietly. I paid off my debt, opened a small studio, put my name on the door. No one laughed. The house filled with plants again. The garden breathed. Some nights I still expected his voice. The knock, the command. It never came. Control only works if someone stays. I didn't, and nothing chased me when I left. The investigation moved quietly. That was the worst part. No sirens, no scenes. Just letters with seals, emails written in careful language, pauses that stretched into consequences. My brother's name stopped appearing on court calendars. His voicemail changed, shorter, tighter, like someone learning how to disappear without admitting it. I heard about it from my aunt first. 6 months, she said. Minimum. She didn't sound pleased. She sounded tired. My father moved out before the order was finalized. Took only what fit in the trunk of his car. Left behind books he'd never read and furniture chosen to impress people who never stayed long enough to sit. He didn't ask for permission. He still thought the house was his. The first night alone, I walked the halls with the lights off. Learned the way the floors creaked when no one was trying to control them. Found a crack in the ceiling I'd never noticed because I'd never looked up without bracing. I slept better than I had in years. A week later, my mother came by during the day, no warning, just a knock that lacked confidence. We didn't hug, we planted bulbs instead. Side by side, quiet. Her hands shook at first, then steadied. Dirt has a way of leveling people. "I didn't know how to stop him," she said finally. "I know," I replied. It wasn't forgiveness. It was accuracy. When she left, the house felt lighter, like something heavy had finally been named and set down. At the cottage, the ocean didn't care. I went there when the city got loud, when old instincts tried to wake up, when silence felt unfamiliar instead of safe. One evening, as the sun dropped low, my phone buzzed. A message from my father. "You'll regret this. Families don't survive betrayal." I typed 3 words, deleted them. Put the phone face down and watched the tide erase its own footprints. Some structures collapsed because they were rotten. Some because they were never built for everyone. By spring, the garden bloomed again, pink, stubborn, alive. People asked if it was worth it. I always thought of the empty room, the knock, the briefcase on the table, and the first morning I woke up without waiting to be told who I was allowed to be. Yes, it was. Summer didn't fix anything. It revealed what was already broken. My father didn't disappear, he reorganized. New apartment across town, new routine, same entitlement. He started telling people his version early, before anyone asked. She manipulated an old woman. She brought in a predator lawyer. She stole the house. Stories need listeners. He found a few. What he didn't find was leverage. One afternoon, a certified letter arrived addressed to him. I recognized the seal before I opened it. Petition to vacate. 30 days, no extensions. The house had never been his to leave behind or return to. That night he showed up. No call, no warning. Just the doorbell, pressed once and held too long. I didn't open it. Through the glass I saw him standing on the porch like he still belonged there. Hands in his coat pockets, jaw set, practicing a speech he'd used my whole life. "Mara," he called, "we need to talk." I stayed still. "You've embarrassed me," he continued. "People are asking questions." Silence stretched. "I raised you," he said finally. "You owe me." That word used to work. It slid into my chest and rearranged things. This time, it landed nowhere. "I don't owe you silence anymore," I said through the door. His face tightened. Something sharp moved behind his eyes. "You think this ends with paperwork?" he asked. "You think I'm done?" I watched him wait for a reaction. He didn't get one. He left without shouting. That worried me more than if he had. 2 days later, my brother emailed. No subject line, just text. He's not letting this go. I stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. At the coast that weekend, the wind came in hard. The cottage rattled. Sand hissed against the windows. I slept anyway. Sunday morning, I found the lock on the back door scratched. Not broken, tested. Someone had tried it. I stood there for a long time, key in hand, listening to the ocean remind me how small human threats really were. Back in the city, I changed the locks, installed cameras, told no one. Control doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it circles, and I could feel him looking for a way back in. The break-in didn't happen the way I expected. No shattered glass, no forced door, just a notification at 2:17 a.m. from the camera over the side yard. Motion detected. I watched the feed from my phone, heart steady in a way that scared me. A figure moved through the edge of the frame. Hoodie, baseball cap pulled low. He knew where the camera was. Stayed just outside its clean angle. Professional enough to be deliberate. Personal enough to linger. At 2:19, the motion stopped. At 2:20, my phone buzzed with a text. "Check your mail." Morning came gray and quiet. I didn't sleep. I made coffee and waited for daylight like it was backup. Inside the mailbox sat a single envelope. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a photocopy of the trust document. Highlighted, not my name. A handwritten note beneath it, block letters pressed hard enough to tear the paper. This can still be fixed. I took the envelope inside and locked the door behind me. At noon, Daniel Holloway called. "Your father filed a motion," he said. "Emergency injunction, claims coercion, claims undue influence." "On whose part?" I asked. "Mine," he replied calmly, "and yours." I laughed once, then stopped. "He's escalating," Holloway said, "which means he's running out of room." That afternoon, my brother showed up at the studio, not the house, neutral ground, safer for him. He looked thinner, less polished, like someone who'd aged a year in 6 months. "He's spiraling," Evans said without preamble. "He thinks if he pushes hard enough, you'll fold." "And you?" I asked. He hesitated. That was new. I think he doesn't know how to lose. Neither did I, until I learned how not to fight. That night, the camera caught movement again, this time closer, this time longer. At 11:43 p.m., the feed showed him standing under the oak tree, staring at the house. Not breaking in, watching. At 11:44, the porch light flicked on. He stepped back into the dark. At 11:45, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. His voice came through the line, low, controlled, familiar enough to make my spine tighten. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be," he said. I didn't speak. "I built that house," he continued. "I built this family, and I won't be erased by my own daughter." "You already were," I said. "You just didn't notice." The line went dead. The next morning, Holloway called again. "They scheduled the hearing," he said. 48 hours. I looked at the house, the locks, the garden just starting to bloom. "Good," I replied. Because this time, he wasn't knocking. He was coming for everything. And so was I. The courthouse smelled like old paper and impatience. Wooden benches, muted voices, people pretending their lives weren't about to pivot on a stranger's sentence. My father sat 2 rows ahead of me, back straight, jaw locked, wearing the suit he used to reserve for moments he believed were historic. He didn't turn around, he didn't have to. He knew I was there. Daniel Holloway arrived last. Calm, unrushed, briefcase light this time. He nodded once and took his seat like this was already decided. The judge entered. No drama, no patience. "Emergency injunction," she said. "Let's proceed." My father stood first. He spoke about coercion, about manipulation, about a daughter led astray by a man with an agenda. He spoke like he always had. Measured, confident, convinced that tone could replace truth. When he finished, he sat down without looking at me. Holloway stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He laid out dates, documents, medical evaluations, email, timestamps. He read one sentence aloud. "She won't fight it." The judge looked up. "Who wrote that?" she asked. My brother shifted in his seat behind us. Too late. Holloway handed over the final exhibit. Camera footage, time-stamped. My father standing under the oak tree at night, watching. The judge leaned back. "This injunction is denied," she said, "and I'm referring this matter for further review." The gavel came down. Once. That should have been it. In the hallway, my father finally turned to face me. His eyes weren't angry. They were empty. "You think you won?" he said quietly. "You don't know what winning costs." "I do," I replied. "I paid it my whole life." He smiled then, not warmth, recognition. That night I went home alone. The house was dark, too dark. The porch light was off. The front door stood slightly open. Inside, the air was wrong. Still. Touched. On the kitchen table sat the wooden box from the cottage. Empty. And beneath it, a note in his handwriting. "If I can't have it, neither can you." Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked, and I realized the final thing he'd taken wasn't money. It was time. I didn't call out. Sound is what people listen for. I stepped back into the hallway and reached for my phone, keeping my breathing shallow, controlled the way Holloway once told me witnesses should breathe when they don't want to be noticed. The creak came again. Upstairs. Slow. Careful. Someone who knew the house well enough to avoid the loud boards. I moved into the living room and picked up the fireplace poker. Heavy, solid, real. "Dad," I said quietly. Not loud enough to travel far, just enough to let him know I wasn't hiding. The movement stopped, then footsteps, measured, descending. He appeared at the bottom of the stairs like he'd always owned the space, coat still on, eyes sunken, jaw set in that familiar line of righteousness. "You changed the locks," he said. "You tried the back door," I replied. For a moment, neither of us moved. The house held its breath with us. "I just needed the box," he said. "It belongs to this family." "It belonged to Grandma," I said, "and she gave it to me." He smiled, thin and tired. "You always confuse possession with worth. And you always confuse control with love." That did it. He stepped forward, not fast, not violent, certain. I raised the poker. He stopped. Outside, red and blue lights flashed across the walls. Silent at first. Then the siren cut once. Short, sharp. His face changed. Not fear. Calculation. "You called the police," he said. "No," I answered. "The cameras did." Footsteps thundered on the porch. Voices, commands. He looked around the room, the house he'd ruled, the place that had finally rejected him. "They'll believe me," he said. "They always do." The officers entered before I could answer. He didn't resist. He didn't need to. The evidence did that for him. Trespassing, harassment, violation of court orders. As they led him out, he turned once. "You think this makes you whole?" he asked. "No," I said. "It makes me free." The door closed. The house exhaled. The wooden box was recovered from his car, everything inside intact, photographs, letters, proof. Nothing missing, nothing left behind. Spring came fully after that. The garden bloomed hard and bright. The house settled into itself. My life stopped feeling like a reaction. One morning, months later, I sat on the porch with coffee cooling beside me, the ocean a memory instead of an escape. I thought about the knock, the empty room, the briefcase on the table. Power doesn't disappear when you take it away from someone. It just goes quiet. And in that quiet, I finally heard myself.